Guys, we had it was a prolific few years, 2015 to 2020. I want to bring up a lot of these designs with Andy when we get a chance to talk with him. But let's forward to the debut of Urban Ash and how that came about. We've got Cameroon and Ebony. We've got Koa in Hawaii, and now we've got kind of the third leg of the tripod in the sustainability arena. How'd that come about, and what drove it?
There was a period of time at Taylor where we had a corporate jet. We had one, then we had another one. Kurt flew the wings off of that plane around the world, helping building our
working on sales and distribution. Mm-hmm. That's what I was doing. Actually, in 2015, I had to move my folks into assisted living. And then over the next several years, it was like, helping them, moving my sister out. My dad had dementia, him passing away a few years later, and then my mom a year after that. So that's what those 5 years were like for me, tending to family and then doing a lot of international travel too, to continue developing sales and marketing. And also during that period, we were working towards the sale of the company, to an ESOP. We'd started planning that a couple of years before then. So those were the main things I was working on then.
I had the privilege of tagging along on a couple of those trips.
Yeah, that was incredible. We worked hard on those trips, but we got so much done.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You guys really planned every stop. I mean, put in a plug for a corporate plane. They land you, you'd go out, visit a dealer, drive to another dealer, the plane would reposition, you'd come to where the plane is, so you weren't driving in a circle. You get on, your lunch was there, you get on, you go to the next place, get out. I mean, you'd see 4 dealers in a day across a lot of mileage, and you can only do one a day. Any other?
Yeah, we were able to do, I'd say 3 to 4 times more than we could, otherwise. So it was like compressing a lot of years worth of work into a much shorter period of time.
And then I used it to go to Africa because the only way to get stuff there was to take it, unless you shipped a container, which took forever. So I almost had a roof rack on top of that thing, but I literally would take the sofa out and put cargo in, and we'd fly out there with my crew. And so we had this plane. I knew we wouldn't have it forever. It was a tool we used for a temporary point in time. We sold it at one point in time and got out of it because, I like to say about, a private jet, one thing about it is it's expensive. And the other thing about it is it's expensive.
It's really expensive. And so, you don't always have a plane at your disposal because they have maintenance that has to be planned around your crew. They'll have vacations or different things. You can have a mechanical issue, somewhere in the plane goes down. So it's not like you're just, I get to, just call up and go anywhere I want, whenever I want. I mean, the first plane we had, we got almost halfway across the Atlantic, leaving St. John, Newfoundland. And I could always recognize the look on Robbie's face. He'd come up and come walking back into the cabin. I'm like, oh no, what's wrong? He's like, well, the batteries weren't getting charged. And I'm like, oops. Okay. And he's like, so, the shortest distance back to land is either continue going or turn around. We turned around to go back. And I was like, don't touch anything in the plane. Don't touch, any switch. No, nothing.
Nothing
like, okay, this could be it. We got back there. And the guys I was with, they booked flights and got over to Toronto. And we were going to the Messe in Frankfurt. And I stayed with a plane. It was a couple of relays. And we got someone from Toronto to come out and fix the plane. Then I went over. But, you have to be prepared for things like that if you have a plane too.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the second plane we had, the last trip, we were going to Europe. And we came into New York and the landing gear wouldn't go down. Did you know about that?
No.
The right main landing gear. And so they're like tilting the plane, doing this and that, finally got it down.
Shook it down.
I was on that one.
Take that landing gear out.
It's like, okay, so those things can happen just like, commercial flying. And so that was the end of the trip.
Well, you were on the toughest of planes now, which is kind of a fun topic, but all of a sudden it teaches you about commercial flights. Well, this is delayed because we have a mechanical problem. I'm like, delay it. Fine. That's fine with me. I know what it's like. And also the other thing, I know what internet on a plane costs. So when you go on a plane and you pay $8 to have Wi-Fi, that's the best deal in the world. Even if it didn't work, you shouldn't complain.
$18 all the way from San Diego to Tokyo.
I won't even tell you what internet costs on a plane because it's like immoral. So what they're providing you for $8 or $4 is you should not complain about. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And then, different things become obsolete on a plane when you have it. And one of the things is the customer service unit, which are the switches and everything, the monitor, the air show that shows where you're going, all that kind of stuff, including the internet antenna, because the internet antenna is a little satellite dish up in the tail, and it moves so that it's always, connected to a satellite, so you get internet. And those things wear out. They get used up and they have to get replaced.
Yeah, you think you're going to buy a new $29 DirecTV thing.
No, we were buying this one, we're replacing it with a rebuilt used one that would have a 6-month warranty. That'd be cheaper than a new one. And it was $85,000 every time. Right? And then you have to pay for the package to get so many megs or gigs or whatever of download and upload speed. You pay that on top of it, and we did that several times because they just get used up, where we had to replace it. And then there weren't any more available because Mark Cuban had bought all of them out there for his old plane, so that he sort of
hot spares ready to go.
Yeah. So then we had to upgrade to a new one, and that cost like twice as much. So it's ridiculously expensive. But as you know, we got so much more work done. We grew the company a lot.
It was a spurt, and the plane helped.
So it more than paid for itself. I mean, it grew the company, and the company got more profitable than the cost of having the plane.
So that leads us to urban ash.
Yeah.
Because I would fly those planes back and forth to Africa. And then I thought, we have this Gulf Stream. It's very comfortable. It can go around the world. We have a good crew. And I have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's not going to come around again, that I don't think. And so I invited 5 colleagues who are all interested in forestry operations like I was. And I said, let's do a trip around the world in 30 days on this plane. Come with me. We'll do it. And we'll visit cutting edge forestry operations where they're planting and growing trees on purpose in areas where they either should be or shouldn't be planting those trees. Because maybe it's endemic or maybe it's not endemic, like spruce in Ireland. There's Sitka spruce planted all over Ireland. Who knew, right? So I said, let's go visit these things. This is our chance. We took 29 days and we flew around the world visiting all of these places. And on the way back from that trip, we first started out, we had a little catch saying, a little motto that we said after we went a few places: there will be no sustainability unless there's replanting. And then about halfway around the world on the trip, we changed that to where we said there will be no sustainability without good governance, right? Good governance is going to get with sustainability. And then somewhere towards the very, very end, I started thinking, what if we planted trees like in cities and backyards? People plant trees all the time, but they plant, a fruitless plum tree because it's pretty. Why not plant a tree that has value? Every tree reaches end of life. Every tree reaches end of life. What if we were more purposeful? And there was an article, and when I got back, there was an article in San Diego newspaper that a friend showed me. She had read it. And it was about people that are cutting urban trees. And there was a connection. There was a connection in these people to somebody that my wife used to work with. And so I read the article and I'm like, urban wood, yeah. And that thought tied with what I was thinking and we were discussing on the way back from the World Forestry Tour. One thing led to another. And I said, Scott, look into this. Scott Paul, take a look. See what, next thing you know, he went to fly-in in Rome about urban forestry. There's this whole urban forestry thing from country to country. A lot of people haven't learned how to exploit it, but they're thinking about it. Well, he went to something, a big symposium in Orange County, Los Angeles, southern Los Angeles area, just up the street from us. And all these people came. He invited them back to Taylor Guitars. And it's like, anyone who wants to come back, we can meet. You get a tour. I'll have Bob talk to us because he's interested in this. They all came back. These people from U.S. Forest Service, they have a whole division for urban forestry. Who knew? These other companies, arborists, big arborists. And I spoke, we met. One of the arborists called West Coast Arborist, and they're big. They're as old as Taylor Guitars, started the same way we started, grew. They have 300 municipal clients. They take care of 12 million trees in California and in Arizona. And they had already started a log yard and trying to repurpose some of the logs. A lot of it has to be mulch, some of it's firewood, but some of it's lumber. And they started a little tiny division that they called Street Tree Revival, making some patio furniture and outdoorsy things out of the wood. One thing led to this is in the fits in the category of sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart, because when we're thinking about this, there they are thinking about it too. Being in California, every kind of tree was planted. We had to plant all our trees in Southern California.
Yeah, eucalyptus. All the eucalyptus were from, seeds from Australia.
We planted, the ash we use is a tropical ash. It was brought to LA by a man named Shamel. That's called Shamel ash in the whole LA basin. And we call it urban ash because it makes a little bit more sense. But it comes from the tropics. But when you plant it in more of a dry climate and you water it and it's a field tree, in other words, it's not in a forest everyone's trying to grow as high as they can to get a little sunlight. It can just spread out. The trunks get big. We identified that. Andy and I went up one day and we looked at all these logs that were in the log yard. Well, this looks like an interesting wood. That looks like an interesting wood. So we started using ash, some walnut. We get our blackwood that we used to get from Tasmania. We get it from Northern California now when they take a street tree out. They take it out because it has to come out. It's going to fall over. It's ruining the sidewalk. It's gotten into the pipes. They cut it. And so they've mobilized. They have 600 teams of people around that are taking down trees every day and planting new ones. When they identify a Taylor tree, they call it, they bought all different equipment so they can take a whole log, put it on this log truck, bring it back to Pasadena, put it in the yard, and cut it into wood for us. We use red ironbark eucalyptus, which makes a great side and back. It could make a great fingerboard if we can figure out how to make it dark instead of light. Mm-hmm. And there's millions of those trees. I just drive down the street in El Cajon. It's like fingerboard. They're all over, there's 20 of them between our shops, There's a fingerboard tree.
Fingerboards as he drives.
Yeah. So at any rate, it turned out to be something good. And we have there's millions of trees, millions planted in the cities along the freeways. And we'd like to do, so we continue planting the idea to even bureaucracies like Caltrans, which is in charge of all of the California state freeway systems and road systems. I have this dream that by the time I die, the clover leaves all over California would be planted in trees that have end-of-life use. And as a matter of fact, when Scott brought this whole group down, I got up and did a little talk and told them about how I thought about this whole thing. And I said, we should plant trees with end of life in mind. And they were like, nobody's even ever thought of that. Mm-hmm. That's a new idea. Well, every tree is going to get grown. It's going to get watered. Every municipal tree is going to get trimmed, taken care of. And then one day it's going to die. It might be 100 years, might be 150 years, might be 40 years, might be 30 years. It's going to die. What do you do with it after that? You throw it away? What if you planted a tree purposefully? What if people planted trees purposefully? What if people went to Home Depot? Remember I said earlier, you can't buy a koa seed, you can't buy a ebony seed, or you can't even buy these trees. What if you go to Home Depot garden right now, you see ornamental trees, fruit trees. Those are 2 categories. What if there was a 3rd category? High value hardwood tree. Hey, honey, why don't we plant a walnut tree? I hear that wood is worth something when it's done. It might pay for the money it costs to extract it. Because people spend $5,000 to take a tree out of their backyard nowadays.
Well, and that,
I
think there's a misnomer out there that this urban timber must be really cheap.
If you want cheap wood, go into the tropics, hide in the shadows, have a bunch of labor with bare feet, taking those trees that nobody's paying for. If you want expensive wood, have a crew of 6 guys in hard hats that are getting paid California wages to drive on a freeway, set up cones, take out all their safety gear, get paid their salary and everything else, and take down that tree and then take it to someplace in California. That wood costs more than exotic wood. And they do think it's free wood. It is not free wood. Almost all wood is free. It's the labor that it takes to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the guys, I think I can attribute this to Mike Osman, said it's like being given a free puppy.
There you go. Yeah.
It's going to cost.
Yeah, it's going to cost.
By the way, footnote, Kurt, on the plane trips overseas, it was not uncommon for us to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in different countries in a single day.
Yeah, to optimize our time.
Yeah.
Sure did.
And the crew worked very hard. Jillian worked very hard. I mean, you get into the hotel at night, we'd drag in after a long day, and then you see them going to store to scrounge up stuff to be able to prepare food the next day for the flights.
And the crew's very careful about not getting sick, careful about where they're going to eat. The last thing they want is to wake up with a tummy ache the next morning or a cold or something like that.
Yeah, she used to, when she'd go to Cameroon, the flight attendant, Jillian, she used to bring her own sheets and everything. They stay at the one decent place, the Hilton. She'd go and bring her own environment to set up in there just to try to sleep and everything,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Quite an effort.
Yeah.
Well, guys, but I'll tell you, without that plane, I don't think I could have done the project in Cameroon. We went too often and had to take too much stuff. It would have been it's hard to get there commercially.
What was the typical route you would take to get there?
Well, when we had the first plane, which couldn't fly as far, the Hawker, we'd fly to St. John's, Newfoundland, stay overnight. We would fly to Spain and stay overnight. We would fly to
that would be four legs to get to Spain.
Yeah. Yeah, we would have to stop and buy some fuel, go to St. John's, spend the night. Then we would fly and stop in the Azores and buy fuel. A couple times we had a tailwind and we flew all the way to Spain without buying fuel, but mostly we'd stop. And then we would leave Spain and we would fly to the middle of Algeria in the Sahara and stop at a little tiny town outpost called Tamanrasset. And we'd stop in Tamanrasset and in a kind of a military / commercial airport that was completely empty. Nobody there except for guards. And somehow we'd land, we'd get fuel, and we'd get out of there again, and we'd fly on to Cameroon. With the bigger plane, the Gulfstream, later, we could leave, we got to where we would leave El Cajon at 6 p.m. So we'd come, we'd work a day, we'd load the plane, we'd do some stuff, and then we would eat dinner on the plane while we flew from here to, say, New York. They're looking for good weather, cheap fuel is kind of where they want to stop, right? And
a runway that was long enough to accommodate the plane.
Yes, and stop in the United States so we don't have to go through customs and not fly all the way to Canada, because St. John's, Newfoundland is Canada, but it's way out in the Atlantic Ocean. It's as close to Europe as you can get. We didn't have to get that close. Then we would stop at, it'd be 1 a.m. or something, that local time. It was only a 4.5, 5 hour flight to get there. We would buy fuel, turn everything into beds. All 6 of us would lay down and sleep, and we would sleep from there to Madrid, or to, sometimes we would fly to the Canary Islands, right? Tenerife. Sometimes we'd fly to Segovia. We took the chance to fly to different places to see them. But often we go to Madrid. There, sometimes I pick up my partner Vidal from Madinter in Spain. And then the next day we could fly. Yeah, we flew all the way to Cameroon in one stop without buying fuel. Yeah, so that was another 5.5 hour flight. So it was really, in reality, we took 2 hours longer to get there than a commercial flight would take. It takes 25 to 30 hours to get there commercially. But in this scenario, you have a complete overnight. You land in Spain. It's because of time change. Mm-hmm. It's only 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're a little jet lagged. You got to either not sleep or take something to help you sleep. You get up the next morning, you leave, but you've rested, you've slept. So when you land in Cameroon, you're not wiped out.
Yeah.
When you fly commercially, you almost need a day and a half just to try and find which way is up. You can hit the ground running on that plane. Great commercial for planes.
Yeah.
And then there's a time when that ends, and it's a time to get rid of them.
Yeah.
When it doesn't make sense for the company anymore.
Is it better than a boat?
Way better than a boat.
Well, it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
I don't know how a boat would be a tool in a business.
Dave and I were discussing earlier how we both get seasick really easily.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, what they say about boats is the 2 great days: the day you buy one and the day you sell it.
Yeah.
Kurt, just one last airplane story. We were diverted to Guam on a trip, and we had a lobby call of 3 a.m. and we all arrived bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and there was a guy who was sound asleep with his GS Mini in the lobby.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
Next time, yeah.
And I think in hindsight, we'd all wished that we'd put our business cards next to this guy.
Yeah, then he'd wake up and go, what the heck?
The whole Taylor team was
there.
there.
We spent the night there, then we flew from there down to Brisbane.
Well, we talked a lot about planes, planting wood, that type of thing, but like what was happening with our brand and our factory and our guitars during those years?
Well, Andy was a busy guy.
Andy was busy.
Clearly. And I wanted to bring that up. 2019, it was announced that Andy was going to be a 10% owner in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So talk us through how that all came about. I imagine it was a long-term plan that was coming to fruition.
It made sense at the time. Kurt brought it up, and I'd been thinking about it for a while.
And it partly had to do with the coming sale a year later too, right?
Setting up for that.
Partly, but there's something about ownership, and maybe we can relate that to ESOP, employee ownership. But with Andy, I suppose we'll talk about the story of Andy, and Andy will tell his story too. But when I talked to Andy about coming, the thing that I said to him that made him quit his wonderful life he had, making super nice bespoke guitars that cost $30,000 a pop, and he made about 12 of them a year in half of a 2-car garage. And then he played music. His life was as nice as it could be. He was very successful. And he wasn't sure that coming to Taylor was going to be a better life. And I said, well, look at it this way, Andy. You have some talent, and you're going to spend that talent over your life. And right now, your talent can be spent making a better musical experience for 12 people a year with your guitar making. Or you could spend that talent here and maybe make 150,000 people a year a little more happy with their guitar experience, help to support all the employees and the dealers, and probably you can help to change the state of the art of what guitars are by the time you're done with your career, right? And so he did it. He did it probably mainly out of a sense of responsibility of spending his talent properly. Not like I've always dreamed of working at Taylor. He never dreamed of working at Taylor. He was super happy where he was. In a way, it was a step back in life. You know, he took somewhat of a pay cut to come to us. He was making more money. He had more freedom. He had to get a cell phone for the first time in his life. He didn't even own one when he came to work for us. He had to work with more people, where he used to work alone. Most people would go, why would you do that? And he said, out of a sense of responsibility. So I always felt that Andy had, you know, a foot in Taylor guitars, but not necessarily his whole heart, right? I'm doing this because I'm a responsible person. And when he had ownership, everything changed.
He's not someone that would go out and buy a Taylor guitar either.
No, he'd make his own guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone to go out and buy a Martin. I'd make my own guitar, you know. Yep. When he became an owner and we made him a partner with us, he was all the way 100% in, heart and soul and all. That little difference makes a huge, huge difference. And so for me, it was a huge gesture. It's a lot of things are emotional. It's like, how do you feel about something, right? And all of a sudden he's like, he didn't just work for Taylor, he was an owner. And Kurt and I refused to ever bring a third owner into our company after we became a 2-owner company. When we were a 3-owner company.
Started that way, yeah.
It's like there was nobody that qualified that we were going to try and be responsible for, or hope would be responsible for us, till Andy came along. So it was a big step.
We didn't see how there would be any benefit, just downside.
Yeah. But Kurt came to that same conclusion. I think Kurt's the one who brought it up. He sensed that it was time, and I was like, absolutely, that'd be great.
Well, there was also the pre-sale and post-sale value. So we wanted him in on that.
We knew that we would be doing an ESOP sale, employee stock ownership
plan.
Planned
For a long time.
How far back did that go? Did that
first got the idea in 2012 or 2013? Wow. I presented it to Bob and Barbara.
Kurt started going to the conventions to learn about them, and the workshops and reading, and he's investigated them closely. And because we always felt that we could sell to a financial partner or a strategic partner. A financial partner would probably come in the form of a private equity group, and a strategic partner could come in the form of
like
Yamaha, Fender, somebody like that. And neither one of them sounded right to us.
The guitar companies are completely different cultures. Mm-hmm. We would add a mass exodus of people. Strategic partner, same thing, because that would be all about how do we double the company in 5 years. I know we'll make Taylor guitars in China and Indonesia and this and that. And, you know, it would have been a whole different, nothing that we cared about for the company. So an ESOP was a way of preserving the company's values. And we'd stay on the board, be able to lead the company through good times and challenging times like last couple of years. And there's some decent tax benefits for a owner selling if he chooses to take advantage of it. And then it's an opportunity for, long-term for the people working there to be able to grow wealth in a way they wouldn't be able, they never have an opportunity otherwise. But it's very long-term. It's not I can't retire next year. It's not like that,
No, it's not like that.
Let me ask you guys, because there are other founder-led companies out there that could benefit from wisdom and experience that you've gone through. What would you, for a founder-led company, would you recommend they make that decision to transfer to employee ownership? What advice would you give?
It all depends on a person's goals.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able, if you're a guy that wants to walk away like you're done, I wouldn't do it.
No.
Because you got to lead through. I mean, it's a long transition, to get there. If you're someone that wants to stay involved, like we've wanted to do, and maintain the values of the company and reward your employees, it's a much longer path. Mm-hmm. You're going to be owed money by the company. So you're not going to just cash out. I mean, you're going to have to help the company prosper and grow, including through difficult times, to where you can get paid, right? And not everyone would want to do that.
If a company's too small, it's not right. If a company has, sometimes a company becoming an ESOP, if it has expansion possibilities, it's the same thing that might make it look attractive to private equity could be the same thing that makes it look attractive for an ESOP, because growth is important. And like Kurt alluded to, the last couple of years have been tough for us. The post-COVID years has really brought our whole industry to, some difficult
yeah, it goes
times.
like, whoa, like that, and like that.
I see Dave.
Now it's lower
Dave
than it
raising
was
his
before.
eyebrows as, director of sales. He's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, the world has changed so dramatically. And look, Sam-ish Music, 100-year-old music chain. They just went bankrupt, going out of business. I mean, that's dramatic.
So not everybody's in the same boat. But if they have a unique business or a business that they're in love with and they've built a nice culture there, there's a lot of reasons to explore an ESOP. And we're very encouraging to people to look at it as a way. Maybe yes, maybe no at the end.
It's a long ramp up, though. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of understanding the mechanics of it, and then you have to be able to maintain it going after it.
Yeah, you sure do.
Yeah. You guys had 7+ years as you're thinking about it and ramping up. But when the announcement was made to the employees that we were becoming an employee-owned company, I have to tell you, it was the last thing coming out of 2020. And I want to touch on 2020 because it was a crazy and disruptive and scary and just a time none of us could have predicted. Rewind back to 2019, things are trucking along, and all of a sudden this virus out there becomes a big deal.
Oh my God, I remember hearing about it, and then we heard from Andrew in China, our distributor there, let our guys know that Monty and Andy Lund, that they all had to stay in their house and couldn't go out. And it was going to be for at least 2 months, and business stopped. We're like, you got to be kidding. I mean, how do you even survive with something like that? And then I was on the East Coast. I went back to Amelia Island, Florida for a car show. And when I came back 2 days later, California got shut down.
Yeah, there were some of us out on the road, and the edict from El Cajon was get home, get on a plane now and get home. And it's interesting because so much happened behind the scenes. You guys were busy. Everybody was just thrown off kilter. We sent everybody home on, I think it was March 19th or March 20th. Said, go home. We'll figure out how you can work from home. And it felt like, it was really nice working with you guys. We just had no idea where it was going.
Yeah, it was like it was like the World War III had broken out or something. I mean, you have no idea what the future is. I'll probably never get paid ever again. Am I going to be able to survive?
No one's ever going to want to buy another guitar.
Yeah,
for sure.
I remember walking out of there. I was the last person out to close the gate. We have a security guy named Gregory who actually passed away from COVID a few months later. He's like, no, I'll stay. I go, no, you out. I'll be the last man standing. You go out, I'll close the gate. And then I start driving home and I'm like, so is this what it feels like to lose everything, to lose your whole business? You really didn't know what was going to happen. And it was very soon in and around there, maybe just after that my friend Gary Bunzer, who lived in San Diego for years and years, was a good friend. He moved to Seattle, Washington. He had a website, YouTube site called the RV Doctor. You could still find RV questions answered from him. He was one of the very first people to die from COVID. He passed away soon after that. His wife just was at home and got a text that he died, and we're like, is this what we're in for? And we're all just scared.
Yeah. Tecate hadn't gotten shut down yet. That was a few weeks later, right?
Yeah, so we scrambled.
Bob was incredibly inventive during that time.
Yeah.
Bob and Andy. Yeah.
Well, I started calling, I have good relationships, personal relationships with our mayor of El Cajon, our county supervisor, and I got permission to do what I call keep the pilot light going. We were ordered to close down, but we kept 30 people 30 people is nothing. You don't even know where they are on the Taylor campus, but we kept climate control going. And okay, then we make things for Tecate every day. Okay. We started making some parts so they could continue making guitars. Then those guitars came here and we received them. We even toyed with the idea of moving all of our guitars out of our warehouse into like a FedEx warehouse and then it's not very often that I do this, but I just nixed it. I said, what? No, nobody's going to care about our guitars more than us. And we'll find out a way we are not giving away the only asset that we have into some other building that might, who knows what
we have no control over.
Well, they're an essential business. They won't close. I don't believe anything right now. I don't believe anything in the future. I believe in us having those under our roof. I believe in our ability to. So we were able to keep shipping guitars. And then one day, a month later, Tecate got police tape on it. And they came through there and they said, out of here by 5:00 this afternoon or you lose your maquiladora license. So that place got drained. So then we started, we have to keep the pilot light on. Okay, you can have one person in there to keep something going. And it's like, we can make you masks. Like, what? We can make masks. You guys don't have masks. We have sewing machines. We have people. We sew every day. We start making masks. And then we have, 5 people making masks. That was our production, making a load of several hundreds of masks every day and distributing them for free to the medical centers around there because they were way behind us in being able to obtain that. And then one thing led to, and then we said, look, we sent you stuff. We're starting to open a little bit now. We're starting to have little things. We need things that they make. We sent you guys stuff when you weren't closed. You need to send us stuff when we're not closed. And then, okay, well, you can run as long as people are, 6 feet apart. And over a period of time, we nursed both of those factories. It was months, but we nursed them both back into production. We went to 24/7 operation in Tecate just to give social distancing.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we took that same crew and just split it to a 12-hour shift on top of a 12-hour shift times 4 days and another one times 3 days. And we managed to make guitars and run trucks. And then we get sales reports. We just sold another $8 million worth of guitars this week. What?
Yeah, that started in June. It's like, because people were getting these checks from the government and they were spending money. They were home.
And we were confined to our
homes. They were
homes.
buying guitars. We started having these weeks where our order intake was like 8 million, then 10, then 11, then 12. It was like that. It was like, geez, and we knew that it wouldn't last, but you have to.
We thought we would get some kind of bump out of it at the end of 2019.
You have to take advantage of the opportunity. And I want to say, too, that we'd planned before COVID to have the sale to ESOP at the end of 2020. That had been the plan all along.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into 2020. It's like, well, that's not going to happen. We're shut down with COVID and all that. Then as things started coming back by fall, by around August or September, started thinking, well, maybe we'll still be able to do that. And then we started going full bore on it, probably in September, planning to still have the sale by the end of the.
And we did have the sale at the end because the first half of the year was
Well,
a complete collapse. And the second half of the year was this high demand. So in the end, we had a good year. We completed the ESOP, which was perfect, because if we had waited, interest rates would have changed. I don't think we couldn't afford to do the ESOP now.
Well, there's another complicating
We
factor.
locked in lower rates, got a really good loan.
Consider that our biggest customer, Guitar Center, went through its own Chapter 11 bankruptcy during that year, which was
that happened at the
about a
same
wrench in the
time.
machine. Yeah.
Well, basically, the financial analysts and the banks, you look at our whole history and our projections, and 2020 was kind of a throwaway year.
Yeah. So consider, March of 2020, we all went home that day thinking, well, this is the end.
Yeah. What next?
And then we come back in January and find out that the sale has been made to the ESOP, and we're all co-owners of the company.
Yeah. So what was
You'd
it?
never predicted that in a million
What was
years.
it like from your perspective? Because people must know, we're Bob and I are getting older. You knew something was going to happen. What did you think would happen eventually?
Oh, well, it wasn't a surprise. The timing was a surprise.
Okay.
I think knowing you guys well enough, not that well, we don't pal around and hang out and have really deep discussions offline, but it's not a surprise the path that you took. But that timing, going from a year where we thought, this is it, it's over, to just the opposite. And of course, that incredible demand that we saw. And but then you throw in Guitar Center's bankruptcy, and they came out a much better company, thankfully. It was hard to believe.
What did you think?
It was amazing.
You knew that we would end up having to do a sale at some point.
Yeah.
So what form did you think that was going to take?
I candidly, I didn't give it a lot of thought.
Okay.
I just you head down, and we're doing our work every day, and you guys have it figured out. And when that happens, it happens. So it was a pretty big shock, especially the timing, the manner in which it happened. Not a big surprise, but coming out of 2020, unbelievable. And I'm not alone in that.
Yeah. We, the main loan for the whole thing too, from a Canadian pension fund who really believes in employee ownership. They wanted to support that. The people connected with that would like to see employee ownership in Canada, see more of it, see more supported by the government. So we got a loan from them with a lot more flexibility. It's normally going to be a 5-year loan. We got a 10-year loan with a lot more flexibility with a good interest rate. So, that's from them believing in employee ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Then, we wouldn't be able to do that today. Things have changed too much. Interest rates would be way up. Mm-hmm. So, the timing was good. And not to throw out any numbers, but we ended up, doing the transaction at a lower value than we could have, because we wanted the company to be able to pay for it and get through the debt, and we didn't feel like we needed even more money. I mean, there was an agreed upon price, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. We'll just do it for less.
Yeah, and that's not lost on us either.
Yeah.
The way it played out we couldn't have predicted that in a million years. And how you kept it under wraps the way you did is pretty
that was
too.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
You take a chance and you do the best you can. You plan, you come up with the best plan you can do. You can always sit on your hands and never execute plans like this, or plans like new guitars, or plans like opening your own distribution in other countries, or buying a sawmill in another country, or planting trees that you won't see a return on for 35 years, or trees you'll never see a return on, or open a factory in another country. You could just never execute, but you have to take some risk, and there's no guarantee that ESOP is the best way to go for the company, but we felt strongly that it was the best way to go. And you get to sell a company once. They always say that. People who buy companies buy them every week, buy them every month. They're super good at it. People that sell their companies, if you spend your life building a company, you sell it once. Kurt always sort of practiced selling it along the way. He would get evaluations. He'd learn a lot about it. He'd learn the different ways to do it. And we would kind of have a little, almost like would delve into how to do it.
There's a lot to know about it.
A lot to know about it. And I've always depended on Kurt to do that. That's the kind of thing that he'll pour time into to do it. A lot of people don't. They're blindsided when they sell their company. Oh, we met these people and they seem really nice. And no, they guaranteed us they're going to keep all the same people. And that, I've never heard, well, we're selling this company. They're going to gut it as soon as the things close. They told us that they don't care about our people and they're going to give us less money than it's worth. And we're going to go with them. No, I've never heard that story ever once. I've only heard it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. I care about my people. And, we felt that ESOP was the best way to go because we'd seen a lot of people sell their company and it not really turn out that great. Disagreements and they're quitting. And there's a huge horn lock, for like who's going to be in charge. We want you guys to stay here and run it for the next 5 years.
Power struggles. I would have gotten fired pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we kind of know this company. We know we have challenging times all the time. We've never not had challenging times. We have challenging times right now, but at least we can delve back to what did we do the last time something awful like this happened? Or how are our people going to react if we need to do this, that, or the other thing? And so we're the same cast of characters after the ESOP, and it's nice.
With just new types of struggles that you have to overcome.
Yeah, that we've never seen.
I'm curious what you guys think about this. I heard recently, and I forget where it came from, but they said it's not the company that makes the best decisions that wins, but the company that makes the most decisions that wins.
I'll tell you what, if you can't decide, because you can make a bad decision, but you can then make a new decision and change that, So I would say that there's a lot of wisdom in that saying, because just because you make a decision, it doesn't work out, doesn't mean you have to stick with it forever unless it's really even if you sell your company and it turned out to not be the best decision, that doesn't mean you can't decide your way into fixing it, decide your way into changing it. Mm-hmm. You've got to change. If you don't, you gotta steer. Sometimes you gotta go around the block, come back and live to fight another day. I'm happy with what we did. I think our employees are happy. I'm not sure that every employee really understands it. And I'm not sure it's not oversold at the very beginning.
Well, it's such a challenging time. Good grief.
Yeah. But we have a high value, higher than most, even though we start out with a super high value, but most ESOPs start out with
people
literally dollars.
People will find
$5.
Out we have the share price reveal this month, right?
That's right. Yeah.
June 25th, I think. Okay.
Yeah. The name of the game, as Barbara puts it, is stick around. If you stick around and you get to retirement, you're going to have, the way we look at it is, look, you've got your, whatever you can save. You've got your Social Security. You've got your 401k that we contribute to. And now you have ESOP shares. If a regular Joe comes to work for us and works their way to retirement age, and we've had many people work their whole career and retire from Taylor, they could have 3, 4, or 5 sources of income. A lot of people end up inheriting a little bit of something from their folks or an uncle, and they've got their Social Security. Maybe 2-income family is getting the Social Security, and they've saved some stuff. They bought a house. They did it. It can turn out okay for people, and this is just another package of money that comes their way.
I don't want this episode to be viewed as a selling job for ESOP.
No.
We're just, it was the culmination of that 5-year period. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's a long.
It's an interesting topic, but
yep.
I've had people ask me about ESOP, and I've said I wouldn't sell your company to an ESOP. I don't think it's right for you or them. That would be my opinion.
It's not a one size fits all.
No,
for sure.
No.
Yeah.
But during those years, from 15 to I'll say now, or 2015 to 2021, when we reached an all-time high of 1,000 guitars a day of production. We cut 20,000 fret slots a day. We made strips of kerfing that would blow your mind. It's a guitar company. It's not Detroit. It's not, Apple making more iPhones in a week than we make guitars in a year. But there's a lot of hands-on work for that. And we met that demand. We do believe, I've always believed in the factory. We make hay when the sun shines. You could say, well, let's save some guitars for next year. Let's not make all the guitars people want this year. But you know how that is. Next year, the party's over and those orders are canceled. They're like, well, we don't need that guitar. You didn't give it to us when we needed it, and we don't need it anymore, right? So we made those guitars, and it was a testament to the miracles that got pulled off. Because don't forget that during COVID, not only was there a high demand for guitars, that was great, but supply chain was somewhere between impossible and you need a miracle just to get through another day.
Yeah.
To find a container to put guitars in to send to our customers, to get a truck, there was a shortage on resin. I have a little bit of theory, and that's that there's a certain amount of gross national product. There's a certain amount of money that people are going to spend in a year. And when you take away 30-40% of the places they can spend it, you couldn't go to a concert, you couldn't go on a cruise, you couldn't go on a vacation, they're going to stuff all that money through a different pipeline. They're going to spend the money one way or the other. They're not going to just not spend the money. So the whole world economy sort of was being supported by industries that could make things that people wanted to buy and take ownership with. It was an age of manufacturing. It wasn't an age of the Eras concert. It wasn't an age of going on a cruise. It wasn't the age of going to conventions and party. The dental hygienists weren't having their convention that year that they were all spending money on and the hotel was receiving. So all of a sudden, there was more demand for any durable good: resin, foam, wood, lacquer, everything.
Peloton.
You could do it at home, but Peloton, they peaked out because no one's going to buy 2 Pelotons. At least they'll buy 20 guitars. We at least have that. But you know what? A lot of those people right now are selling some of those guitars. They're in competition with us today. But it was funny when you couldn't get paint because there's no resin. You couldn't get rigid foam to make a new kiln because there's no resin. You couldn't get foam for inside the casing because there's no resin. You couldn't get vinyl because there's no resin.
We found out how connected the supply chain really was.
Yeah, sometimes there's single or duplicate sources for a base product that makes sort of everything.
Yeah.
And we had this higher demand, getting tuners, getting wood, urban wood came in handy. There were trees right up the street. There was no ocean involved.
Right.
Right. And during that time, we had some other boutique guitar makers make fine guitars that couldn't get cases and what they got. And they goes all the way back to the days when we started making cases in Santee so we could ship guitars. And I'm hearing the same lament from some of my friends. So we started making cases for other guitar makers. Mm-hmm. I was able, well, can you supply us? I go, well, I know a case company that supplies the largest manufacturer of acoustic guitars in the United States, and they've never missed a delivery date in 25 years. They could probably do that for you too, And so we took on a little business there, which was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And helped our friends.
Yeah, and all because you spent time with your wife and your mother-in-law on a weekend in the late 80s and figured out how to make a guitar case.
How to make a guitar case. Me and Cindy and Patty making a guitar case on a weekend. So those were interesting years.
We're still in the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
totally in the aftermath of it. It's going to take a little while for the system was perturbed, and that perturbation it's kind of like gaining control of your car again when you're like swerving from side to side, like just fighting your steering wheel until finally you slow down, you're driving down the lane, you know.
You got different factions yanking on the wheel in different directions too.
Wow, it's a lot too much, it's a lot too little. Costs are higher. It's just it's an interesting time. Well, we're 50 years old.
Yeah, here we are.
And that's a nice birthday.
Yeah.
50 years. Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well done, guys.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
As always.